Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the next episode of the Frisco Report. Mike, you ready to get into this conversation of the Cowboys?
I'm ready. I've been ready.
But before we get to that, how was your Memorial Day weekend, bro?
Fast, bro. I'm telling you, fast. We made some steaks, broccoli and cheese, baked potato, like that. Fortunately, I don't know any fallen soldiers. But my grandpa served in the Navy. My dad was a Marine for 25 years. But I'm thankful, even though we're celebrating the ones that fell. I like to celebrate the ones that are still alive serving this country too.
Well said. Well said. Yeah. Big shout out to all the service members here and gone, but never forgotten. Legends live forever. Okay. And that's what I think of a serviceman. All right. So great to know, Mike. We have a couple of topics here of discussion, some fun stuff to talk about. And we're gonna kick it right off talking about the top 5 best offseason moves of the Cowboys. All right, we're going to get 5. Now, Mike and I have not talked about this offline or anything, so I don't know what his 5 are. And he doesn't know what my 5 are. There might be some crossover, but we'll see, okay? But without further ado, let's get into it, Mike. And for me, this isn't in any particular order. I'm just going over 5, okay? So, number 1 on my list of top 5 moves of the Dallas Cowboys for the 2020 season. Number 1, for me, the hiring of Mike McCarthy, Mike. It had to be the number 1 on the top of the list. It's just, the Cowboys needed to make a change. I think it was 5 seasons behind, 5 seasons overdue. But Jones kept giving Garrett, chance over and over. Garrett had his moments here and there, but it was more of the same old for the most part. It was so predictable. You could predict the record sometimes. If they went 13-3, you knew the next year it was not going to be good and things like that. So, and you knew that there would be a one-and-done team. So they had to make this change, Mike. What's your thoughts on Mike McCarthy being on my list here of top 5?
Hey, absolutely. Top 5. He's definitely number 1. I know you're not rating, but I am. All right. We suffered for 9 years. A lot of talent wasted. You look at a video on YouTube that I did 8 years ago, and you look at a video I did during this past season. I'm saying the exact same thing. Why am I saying the exact same thing? Because Jason Garrett never developed into that head coach. It was the same repeating mistakes over and over and over. A lot of talent wasted, Joe. And I'm telling you, the move of Mike McCarthy, it had to be done. I think they got the right kind of guy. Here I am talking like Jason Garrett. They got the right kind of guy. And it had to be done, Joe. And I'm thankful that it did get done. I really can't say Jason Garrett changed the team by doing this. There's nothing. Coach of the year, 9 years, no NFC championship. It's crazy to me. Mike McCarthy's definitely number 1 on my list.
Awesome. Okay, so let's go ahead and go to your number 2, since ours kind of matched up there at number 1. What do you have on number 2, Mike?
Bones Fossil, number 2. Bringing them in. The Dallas Cowboys were 32nd on special teams, and we really haven't had a punt returner or some kind of schematics on special teams since Dwayne Harris. And last time I checked, he's been gone for a long time off this football team, and there were still no answers. And John Fossil coming in here with the schemes, fake punts, fake field goals, onside kick percentages with Greg Zuerleiner and all that jazz. It's shaken up there on special teams. And when you're 32nd on special teams in the National Football League, you're embarrassing. And Cowboys were definitely embarrassing in that group.
Yeah, I love it, Mike. That's a good one. That's not on my list, but I'm glad it's on your list. That's definitely one. I agree. That's a good one there. So, Fossil for special teams, you hit it right on the head. It's been a disaster for over a decade of just mediocrity, and special teams part of that. They talk about winning in all 3 phases of the game, and special teams, they rarely ever won it. They rarely ever won it. they had some success with Bailey, but it always seemed like teams would have a really good average per return. We'd punt it, kick return. They would almost always get to, it felt like almost the 50-yard line. I know that's stretching it, but they rarely do we ever have anybody pinned back. And a lot of teams, return with success on us. And like you said, Harris, that's probably the last time we had any kind of good return presence, and even that wasn't that good. This guy was always fumbling the ball and all kinds of crazy crap. So we could go like really far back to man, I don't even know how far back you would go. Parcells maybe, but not even. It seemed like Parcells was dumping his special teams coach, I think twice during his tenure. So it's been something that the Cowboys organization has been chasing. I think they probably have it with this guy. Good choice there, Mike. I love it. All right. For my number 2, I'm going with the signing of Gerald McCoy, the defensive tackle. I think this is another. You're going to see a continuing theme here, probably between Mike and myself, but this is something that needed to be done. We're talking about things that needed to be done. This is one of them. Mike and I have talked about this all offseason. The double cheeseburgers, all right? We needed them. And, there was hints that they were going to go in that direction dating all the way back to the Senior Bowl when they interviewed Will McClay. He said that they're going to be looking at a little bit different type of player. One that McCarthy kind of likes, but at the same time, still doing what they do in the scouting department, finding good players. But, catering to your new head coach, and I love it, man. So they get Gerald McCoy, a veteran, still very productive, a lot bigger, obviously, an upgrade, an upgrade over what we've had here. Have just been a lot of bargain bin failures, Covington. Malik Collins, his bad foot, never turned anything really, and they've been chasing that upgrade at defensive tackle, Mike. So Gerald McCoy is number 2 on my list.
Number 3 on my list, Joe, Gerald McCoy. Okay, like what we've been talking about, big bodies. I mean, you go back and you watch this Frisco report. You play that playlist at show after show after show. We probably said Baconator a million times because I mean we're Joe and I, and I'm sure a lot of you guys are, we're sick of being gashed in the middle. We're sick of the screens kicking our butts because there isn't assignments on defense. It's just go ahead, go get the quarterback, don't worry about anything else. And Mike Nolan, Gerald McCoy, I kind of put those two together as my number 3, Joe, just because there's Xavier Woods touched on it just last week. It's totally different. They're actually going to be able to disguise. I think we gave Chris Richard way too much credit. Yeah. Here, I can give Mike Nolan some credit here. There's going to be a lot of different things on defense, and Gerald McCoy is just a huge piece of that addition, Joe.
It's awesome, man. And like we've talked about, he's gonna take pressure off the linebackers and let these guys just roam around and eat and howl and swipe and all kinds of things. So I love it, man. I think it's a big one. My number 3 is the signing of Aldon Smith, the defensive end. He's been away from the game 5 years, but being away means low tread. He was a pretty big part of the early success there, between Harbaugh and that defense. Jim Tomsula, part of that, part of raising him and molding him into what he became. Coming out of the draft, some of the draftniks had the question about Aldon Smith, and they took him like number 7 overall. So they took him very, very high out of Missouri, and he did his thing, and I think only the production there kind of fell off towards the end, just because of the off-field issue. But the Cowboys are taking their, they're rolling the dice here like they always do, and sometimes it hits, sometimes it misses. I feel like this one has the potential to be a true hit. Aldon Smith saying all the right things. We're seeing the interviews and things like that with Jay Glazer, pretty much taking him under the wing, and I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for the work that Glazer does with the with the veterans and that kind of thing, and to bring Aldon Smith into the fray, I think was good for him, and he's in tip-top shape, man. So you needed a boost. You lost Robert Quinn, free agency. There was no way the Cowboys were going to dole out that big money that he got for the Bears. That's good for him. And it's also one of the things that we talk about, Mike. Free agents, they want to come here on a one-year deal because it can revive the career and they can score a big contract. Quinn is a prime example of that. So Aldon Smith, he's betting on himself, and if he has a good year, he could be in line for a big contract, either with the Cowboys or someone else. He's still young. So what you think about Aldon Smith, Mike?
Hey, had Aldon Smith on my list, Joe. And, he had 5 teams trying to go get him. And he picked the Dallas Cowboys. His treatment is in Dallas. He's been doing a lot of charity work with juveniles and with kids, reading books and all that other jazz. And Mike, when you go buy a car, Joe, the first thing you do is, it could be brand new, 0 miles on it. What do? You test drive it, right? Mike McCarthy went to California, went to to Blazers camp, and talked to Aldon Smith before any team was even thinking about signing. So Mike McCarthy knows what Aldon Smith is. He's been doing his homework on him. And, yes, you talk about the risk part of it, Joe, but actions speak louder than words to me. And you look at what he's doing for the community in Dallas already and what he's been doing before he even signed with the team, and the treatment and being consistent and all his little rehab treatments that he has to do. The NFL seen it. They reinstated him. I think this right here was a great move by the Dallas Cowboys. You talked about replacing Robert Quinn. And I know this guy's been out of football for 4 or 5 years, but he's 80% of anything before he left the league 5 years ago. You got yourself a steal.
Yeah, indeed. Good point there, Mike. Who's next on your list there?
Siddhi Lamb. Number 17 overall, Siddhi Lamb. You talk about a 3-headed monster wide receiver core. You talk about a 2-headed running back core, and Zeke and Pollard, right? The receiving core just got that nastier, man. Number 88 is going to shine. And I got his jersey already, Joe. I got it a week ago. And, that mother lover is clean. It's clean, man. And I think Siddhi Lamb's really going to help Dak. It's really going to help Cooper. It's really going to help Gallup. It's going to put defense on their toes. You won't see 8 in the box anymore. Stopping Zeke. Everybody can eat just from this guy alone right here in Siddhi Lamb, Joe.
Yeah, that's my number 4 as well, Siddhi Lamb. So a little bit of crossover, like we mentioned, and he had to be on the list. He had to be on here. I agree. It's he's gonna make this team, this offense, a lot more potent. Just in some recent interviews I've seen of Siddhi Lamb, he's already kind of seen the potential. He recognizes the talent that's already on the team. With Gallup, Cooper, Zeke, Prescott and Zeke, and Jarwin as well. So he recognizes the talent, and he recognizes that adding him into that is going to make him very dangerous. And it was a steal, man. For him to fall to 17, and we've said this before. I don't know that Jason Garrett would have drafted him there. It probably would have been Chase on or somebody else. But Cowboys here, Mike McCarthy, true to his word, best player available, fit him into your scheme, and that's what they did. And I really love that, and I felt that they did that in all 7 rounds of the draft. With every draft pick they had, I felt like they went out, got the best player available on their board probably, and you're going to put them into the scheme. And for the Cowboys, I think that you're setting up for the future. It's going to be Siddhi Lamb there. He can play on the outside. That's really where he played at Oklahoma. He wasn't really a slot guy, but, they can move him around. Riley did that with him, moved him around on some bubble screens, slot, the outside, the X, the Z. You got to love that. You got to love that. And I think for the future, Amari Cooper, his contract, if you really look at it, the Cowboys have that eject button after year 2 of that contract. By then, you have to believe that Siddhi Lamb will be fully entrenched to take the keys over. And, like we said before, Mike McCarthy will continue to add to the receivers. He always has somebody in the chamber ready to rock and roll. So will the Cowboys draft another receiver here in another year or two? You can bet $1 billion on Vegas that he will. He's going to keep them coming, unless somebody pops off here as an undrafted free agent. But for the most part, if he sticks to what he does, analytics and these kind of things, he will have another wide receiver in the chamber ready to roll. Okay. So Siddhi Lamb, I love it, Mike. He had to be on this list. You and I totally agree there on that.
Absolutely. What's your number 5, Joe?
Yeah, my number 5 here, I'm going with, this might not be high on people's list, but I think it's low-key, very important move for the Cowboys this offseason. That was the re-signing of Joe Looney, the center for the Cowboys. And they really protected themselves. Thank God they did, because you're looking at Travis Frederick retiring. And, right, I wouldn't say kind of like Witten, because Witten really did it like when the draft was going on. At least for Frederick, we got a little bit of a heads up, like, hey, let me give you let me do a solid here and let you guys know what I'm gonna do here. I think Witten kind of threw a little wrench in our draft there, and what was it, Mike? We were 2018 out there, AT&T. Yeah. So we got that after the first round. Oh, he's retiring. Oh crap! What the hell? But I think with Looney, it's a similar thing. We re-signed him early. He was one of the first signings that we got aboard here, and thank God we did, because without him, you really would have to think about what you wanted to do as center, and you might have gotten drafted earlier. If it might have been that much more important at that point, but they kept him here. He showed that he could get the job done, and he might end up starting, a couple of games here early on. We'll see how Tyler Biadasz comes along, but I think that was a really, really big part, because you gotta have solid backups. And I feel like of all the solid backups on the offensive line, I feel like Looney's the best one, because we saw what happened when Tyron Smith went out. Cam Fleming, okay, but not that good. All right. And then when Connor Williams left out, Suafilo, not that good. Yeah, his feet were stuck in the mud, not good. So, we're looking at backups. Brandon Knight, they brought in Irving, first round bust. We'll see what he can do, if they can get anything out of him. And Redmond and these guys are in the fray, but I like that. I like that move a lot, and I think it protects him. And you can have competition. He knows the playbook, that kind of thing. Yeah, and another year under his belt. He has more experience at recognizing the defenses and where to call the mic and things like that. So, what's your thoughts on Joe Looney there, Mike?
Hey, I didn't have Joe Looney. I mean, we had all the same guys, except I had Bones Fossil. You had Looney. And that's a huge part, Joe. And what the insurance you have, because you cashed in on that insurance policy when Travis Frederick went down for an entire year. So you already know what you have in a guy like Looney. And I'll never forget when Looney's running down. I forgot who we were playing, but Looney was keeping up with Zeke. And they asked him after the game, how did you run so fast? He said, I pictured a box of Krispy Kreme donuts in the end zone. So the guy's funny. He's very talented. He can really help this offensive line because he's done it before. You talk about signing Andy Dalton, for that insurance for Dak. Signing Looney is almost equivalent to Andy Dalton to Dak. What Joe Looney is to the offensive line, Joe.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Who is your number 5 on your list there, Mike?
I already told you. I already went through all mine. It was Gerald McCoy, Mike McCarthy, Bones Fossil, Siddhi Lamb, and Aldon Smith.
Indeed. You sure did. I think honorable mention, you kind of did mention it there. Dalton.
Yeah.
I think
Dalton.
that one is actually probably really deserving of an honorable mention if we're thinking about it right now, just on the fly here. You protect yourself. God forbid, Dak Prescott continues to hold out and wants to take on fines. I don't think he'll do that. But, outside of that, you got to protect yourself from injury. Do you trust in Cooper? The answer was no. Mike McCarthy, he's going to put his thumbprint on this team, and that's what he did, going with jettisoning one of Garrett's guys, Cooper, and handpicking Dalton and putting him in there. What's your thoughts on Dalton there, Mike?
Yeah, I liked it. And, Dak Prescott's not under any type of contract, so there's no penalties if you don't show up. I mean, he once July 15th hits and July 14th he decides he wants to go ahead and sign it, he can sign it. But right now, there's no fines or anything later on until they get a deal done. Then he holds out. But Andy Dalton coming in, Joe, I love it. It was one of those where you read it, Andy Dalton signs with the Dallas Cowboys, and you just smile because this is the Mike McCarthy effect. All right, he likes. You talk about the bullet in the chamber with with wide receiver. He wants some type of backup there. You look at Favre, Aaron Rodgers, Joe Montana, Steve Young, or how all that happened down there. So he likes his bullets in the chamber at all positions. And we don't go in with like we did with the last 9 years of Tony Romo, and then we got Brandon Weed and Matt Castle, Kellen Moore. That's not going to happen under a guy that has football intelligence like Mike McCarthy.
Yes, indeed. That's so spot on right there that it needs to be quoted by somebody out there. Somebody quote that. What Mike just said, it is spot on. It is. That's GOAT talk right there. Okay, because it's so spot on that you want to reproduce it and sell it for money. That's how spot on that message was there from Mike, because it is. Mike McCarthy knows what it takes. And it just seemed like Jason Garrett was learning on the job. You could tell that he was still learning on the job. Play management, clock management, fourth quarter with 30 seconds to go, wasting 20 seconds bumbling around trying to get the call figured out. I mean, you name it, Garrett did it, and sometimes he wouldn't even learn from it. So it was like, oh, man. Mike McCarthy, number one on this list. You and I had him on there. Yeah, for a reason, But those are our top 5, guys. Let us know in the comments what you guys think the top 5 off-season move for the Cowboys are. And you can do what we did. You can do an honorable mention. We went with Dalton, but he definitely could have been on the actual top 5. But changing gears here, Mike, let's get into our next topic of the day. Mini camps. Okay. There's talk here that the NFLPA doesn't look like they're quite on the same page as the NFL as far as when they want to report. They're talking about June 26th, 27th, that kind of thing. What's your feel here? Do you think they're gonna have actual mini camps this year, or do you think that'll be virtual as well, Mike?
I hope it's hands-on. My gut feeling is they're going to do it. I was looking at a couple of models. Now, I don't know if they're official or not, but there's predicting nationwide there will be about 2,000 cases, only 2,000 cases by August 1, all right? And that's huge. And if that's the case, then they probably will have some type of hands-on mini camp, training camp, whatever might be in June. And you want that because new coach, new defense, new offense, and you got to have some type of hands-on in there, because if they only do like a week of preparation, then the game's tomorrow, what kind of condition are your players in? Then you're looking at hamstring injuries, deep soft tissue injuries. It's not going to be good. Then they got to get used to playing with the N95 respirator mask on too. If they still go that route. I mean, there's so many things that the NFL, NFLPA got to figure out here, Joe, because yeah, I'm greedy. I want football, but these guys are human. They have families. They got to think about that too.
Yeah, I totally agree, man. The thing that really sticks out is, that you're talking about were the injuries, and we see that even with everything on time, right? It seemed to be a thing here with the Cowboys where people were hurting their backs or their hamstrings. So yeah, that might be exacerbated here if there's no time. You don't want to see a blown out Achilles. We saw Dez, try to come back, went full speed here without much on-field conditioning, and he blew out his Achilles. And the comeback ended right there before it even started in New Orleans, which was unfortunate. And that's just part of what happens. When you have time off away from the game for long periods of time, there's a clear difference between working out at your home gym, lifting weights, running on the treadmill, and doing various kinds of other, cardio. It just doesn't compare to what these guys do on the field, So, yeah, hopefully they'll get that thing figured out and come to some sort of agreement, So we'll keep an eye on it. We'll see what happens there with it. I think it will move forward, though, Mike. What's your gut feeling on where we are right now as to where we were a couple of weeks ago?
Yeah, so when Joe talks about coming to an agreement, the NFL player union has to come in agreement with the NFL what's the best plan to open up, and so that's what he's talking about there. But Joe, can you repeat your question real quick? I got sidetracked with that.
Yeah, what's your gut feeling as far as because we've kind of been following this through the season because it's important, right? As far as reopening and things like that. So where we were a couple of weeks ago to where we're at right now, do you feel a little bit more positive as far as yeah, I think the NFL will be able to pull this off, or do you think that we're in the same place or worse? What's your feeling right now?
I think we're in the same place. And until you start seeing movement with the union and the NFL and what these players decide, once you start talking, because right now everything's hypotheticals or just the guessing game, because there's nothing official out of anything. And so here's a statement from the potential return of players to team facilities. We're not putting dates on potential returns. We've been working and continue working hand in hand with the NFLPA. We will base our decision on the latest medical advice and in compliance with local and state guidelines. So you got to look at the union, their agreement, the NFL, if they can get together, what's the state and local guidelines? Because just because the state is opening up, counties can say, wait a minute, we're not going to just do that just yet. We're not going to abide by the state real quick. We still got too many cases. And you look at Dallas, Houston, things of that sort in Texas, there's a lot of cases in Dallas. There's a lot of cases in Houston. And so just because the state is opening up doesn't mean, Arlington County will open up or whatever it's called over there. So I think we're just, there's no movement. So I'm going to say we are still where we are. Now, when those dates of June 26th, June 27th start coming up, and there's really no movement, then I'm like, okay, this is getting worse. Or June 15th, June 14th or whatever, Joe.
Yeah, man, it's a good point, man. It's a good point. I totally agree. I think we're in the same spot that we were a couple of weeks ago. So, good point there. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think what we're looking at from other sports teams, MLS, NBA is announcing that they want to, restart their season there at a unified location, right, at Disney World for ESPN's Wide World of Sports at Disney World. So it's good to see that these sports teams are thinking this thing out the right way to get sports back, because it's a big part of everything. It's there's you'd be surprised what comes from sports. You rebuild little things. You're watching a game, Are you going to be watching it at sports bar? Are you watching it at home? Are you going to order that pizza? You're gonna be reinvesting, into your local economies, with that kind of thing. So, wings, I gotta have the wings. I know you and I have talked about, our choices of what we like to eat during the draft. NFL games, same deal, right? Ordering pizza, eating wings, reinvesting in your local economy. So there's a lot that comes from these sports that come from it. It is a big part of the economy. Obviously, it's not your money maker by any means, but it's a good thing to have in place. Is that right, Mike?
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on. And you talk about investing in local economies and stuff like that. I mean, just the revenue fans build just for the NFL is 38% of the NFL revenue. 38%, and that pays for the players' salaries, and NFL playgrounds and all that other stuff. So, I hope they could come to an agreement with all that and get things rolling. But what's next on the list there, Joe?
Yeah, so that's what that is there, Mike. We're going to close it out now here with, a little bit more roster talk for the Cowboys. Just a quick sneak peek. This is something that we're going to expand upon during the offseason when we start breaking down the roster. But as we sit here right now, Mike, it doesn't look like we're going to be making any other big free agency moves, right? I don't see the Jamal Adams trade. I think that's a bunch of clickbait. That's not going to happen. Cowboys,
right,
have already said that there's no traction there. It's just not there. It's being generated by, some media. Of these people, the media that want, the clicks and the views. So it's just not going to happen. And obviously the other topics there. So, but as far as the Cowboys, Mike, top 5 players on this roster right now, who do you have?
Top 5 players or position group?
Top 5 players. You can go in any order. It doesn't have to be number 1, Zeke, or anything like that. You can go in any order. Or you can go in order if you want.
Top 5 players on the team right now, Joe. All right. I'm going to go ahead and say number 1, Joe, right off the bat, it has to be Dak Prescott. He's a leader of your football team. They got to get him signed. He's not on the team right now, but they will get him signed. And, they got to pay him. $4 million is what he made in the last 4 years. And the success, you can't measure it. It's time to pay him. Whatever the case might be, there was reports with the $175 million, 5 years. All that's baloney. That never happened. Don't buy into the media hype. Make sure you just settle down. Wait for another report to come out to make sure that's factual. But right now, number 1 for me, Joe, is Dak Prescott. They got to get him signed. They got to get him in here. He's very important to this football team.
Yeah, that's a good one there. Dak Prescott, he's on my list as well. I had him there, because that's the face of the team pretty much. It's always been that. The quarterback takes that lead role. And with your quarterback success, your team success goes with it. They're hand in hand. They're hand in hand with the coaching record. So, I think he helped. I think Jason Garrett was fortunate to have Dak Prescott, in the waiting, because we saw what Garrett was able to do whenever Romo was not available, and he couldn't get it done. He couldn't get it done with Castle, Whedon, these other kind of guys. So you gotta have that franchise quarterback in there. So yeah, that's a good one there. Number 2 for me, Mike, I'm going with the Gob, Zack Martin, offensive guard. I think he is, for me, the best talent on this team. I think when you're looking at somebody that really excels at their position at a high elite level, Zack Martin is my guy.
Yeah. Yeah, you got Zack Martin number 2, Joe. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go with Ezekiel Elliott, all right? Because the offense, without Siddhi Lamb, with Siddhi Lamb, it's got to go through the running game. And you need the running game to have success for Siddhi Lamb, Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup. And it all starts up front. You talk about Zack Martin, huge piece to the thing. I mean, Zeke benefits from your guy, Zack Martin. And, Zeke opens things up for Dak. He opens up play action for Dak. He opens up man coverage where Siddhi Lamb, Michael Gallup, you can't cover all of them. Zeke opens all that up. He's definitely your key.
Indeed, Mike. Who's next on your list here? Top 5 players in the Cowboys right now.
Top 5, I got to go with Jalen Smith, Joe. Jalen Smith, Notre Dame, all right? You brought up his stats a couple of shows ago. Stats don't lie. Yeah, the guy looked like he was having a bad season, but when you look at the stats are there. They speak for themselves with what that front seven we talked about of our additions, Gerald McCoy, these guys. Jalen Smith is going to play a huge part on this defense, and he's going to be, number one, calling the plays from Mike Nolan to the other 10 guys on the field, and he's going to be able to make some disruptions under Mike Nolan.
Yeah, that's a great choice. Jalen Smith, definitely one of the top players on this roster right now. And yeah, man, the tackling machine all over the place. Even when they were getting blown up by the offensive line, beat up all year. He made the Pro Bowl for a legitimate reason. So he got in there as an alternate replacement, but I thought well deserved considering the season that they had. At first glance, some people were like, what the hell? But when you really break it down, what he was able to do considering how bad this team was, they didn't buy in. We heard that there was turmoil behind the scenes with the linebacker coach, Chris Richard. These guys, they just weren't getting along. Linebackers suffered from it immensely. And the whole defense kind of took a step back. It just wasn't, linebackers or these kinds of players, but good choice there, Mike. Number 3 on my list here, DeMarcus Lawrence out of Boise State, the sack master, or as Jerry says, the
War Daddy.
The War Daddy. Okay, so did he have a down season last year? I would say yes. Does he play through injury? Definitely he does. But I also feel that he's still one of your top 5 players on this team. He plays the run well, and there's not many, defensive ends or defensive players that excel in both spots. We're talking about rushing the passer and stopping the run. That's a rare breed. It's a rare breed. One of the reasons the Cowboys were smart enough to move up to get him, in 2014 after they drafted Zack Martin in the first round. So good draft class shaping up there, man. You got 2 cornerstone players there out of the draft, and I had to go DeMarcus Lawrence there as my 3rd player, and I think he's going to have a bounce-back season considering the upgrades that the defense has had, different coaching staff. I think he's in for a good year, man. I really do. What's your thoughts, Mike?
Hey, I like D-Ware there. D. Lawrence there. Sorry. D-Ware has been everywhere on media, so he's been on my mind lately. But D-Law, yes, who put out a workout video on Twitter. So if you haven't seen it, definitely go check it out. And then the guy's beasting. He looks more ripped than ever for me. But number 4 for me, Joe, is the most underrated Pro Bowl snubbed tackle that we have on this football team. And his name is Lyle Collins, all right? And, yes, we know how great Zack Martin is. And you brought up Zack Martin. And but Lyle Collins, man, he took a huge step on this offensive line last year, and I really believe he got snubbed. And if he could take that momentum and build on it, there's no reason why he can't make a Pro Bowl, because it really helps out this offensive line, and he's really developed. I think he's one of the best offensive linemen we got, probably top 5 offensive right tackle we in the league.
That's just that's a really good choice there, Mike. Lyle Collins definitely a snubbing of snubs. I think he finally really cemented himself as a really good tackle in this league, especially for the Cowboys. You know, he transitioned from guard to tackle. He did play left tackle there at LSU, but moving more into the guard position for that one season seemed to be his where he would excel. But then they moved him back to right tackle. So you saw a little bit of I wouldn't say growing pains, but I think it's different. You know, most of his career, most of his life, he was on the left side of that offensive line. Cowboys switched him over to right tackle. So there was a little bit of a learning curve there for him. And I think it did take a season or two for that to really develop to where he's at right now. I totally agree. Pro Bowl snub all the way. Dominant. We see him, mauling people now. I know some old school cats like myself really have been looking for that right tackle, Eric Williams type of mauling type of right tackle, and I think that Lyle Collins is that now. I think he's finally reached his potential. Does he have a high ceiling? I think he's refining his skill right now. Of course it can get better, but I feel like he's getting to that elite level. And that's a great choice, man. I love that pick there at Lyle Collins, Mike.
Yeah. Well, what's yours? What's your last one?
I have Ezekiel Elliott Z on here. All right, because he's still one of the elite backs of this NFL, and I think with better coaching, a better offensive line, more play calling creativity, not to be so predictable that maybe they're not going to know when Zeke's going to run the ball. It seemed like whenever Garrett was in command, whether it was DeMarco Murray, D-Mac, or even Zeke, sometimes you knew it was going to be a run, especially on first down. It seemed like that was what they would do. And for somebody of even Zeke's caliber, if they know you're going to run on first down, it's going to be hard to move the ball. But Zeke, year in and year out, is able to get it done with stacked boxes. Am I right? He really does. And he gets a lot of dirty plays where you kind of look at him and you're like, 3 yards there, 4 yards there. But as the game goes on, those defenders, they start to wear down. They start to get tired because Zeke is such a big, athletic running back. People don't want to tackle him. They don't want to tackle him. So I love the player still. And he always gets unnecessary criticism in the offseason, which I really hate. It gets really annoying where they look at a picture of Zeke. He's fat. He's overweight. Where's his six-pack? I'm like, where's your six-pack? You know what I mean? Like, some of these armchair guys are out of control. Ezekiel Elliott has really taken care of himself every year. He's shown that he has. Now, is he a slow starter? That is actually something that is one area that he probably does need to improve upon, because that, since he started here, has been a fact. It has taken him 3 to 4 games to really, to get in the stride where all cylinders are running, and then, starts running over people. So that's the only one area that would really like to see Zeke improve upon. And I don't know if that's a conditioning thing here, or is it we see the Cowboys like to sit some of these players in the preseason. Will Mike McCarthy do that? Will he sit these guys the same way, or will he let them get their wind under them? You know what I mean? I think you got to build that up. But Ezekiel Elliott, man, on my list here, top 5.
You brought up a great point, though, and I can tell you it is the preseason games that's making Zeke have a slow start. And you look at the stats of week 1, week 2, not playing preseason games hurt him. So that's a great call out, Joe. Real good call there. My last one, Joe, you're going to be surprised, all right? This guy's going to be in a contract year. He's from Louisiana Tech. I wanted this guy drafted in the 3rd round the year that he got drafted. His name's Xavier Woods, all right? free safety Xavier Woods. And I just love this guy. Call me biased, but he's in a contract year. He's under a new defensive scheme that allows him to disguise to full quarterbacks, go up there and get picks. I mean, you look at his Louisiana Tech film, the guy was a ball hawk, all right? And I really think he can do some damage in this Mike Nolan defense, in this 3-4 with 3-4 principles. This is going to benefit Xavier Woods. I think he can come in here and get turnovers, make big hits, and make big plays.
Yeah, Xavier Woods, he's a solid player, man, and I kind of talked about him here in one of my recent videos that if he doesn't get re-signed by the Cowboys, he's going to sign somewhere else and have, I think if he lands with the right team, he's going to have himself a hell of a career. He still has a high ceiling for me.
Yes.
I keep seeing improvement in his game. Like I mentioned earlier, talking about the linebackers in Jalen, I feel like everybody kind of took a step backwards last year. And that was everybody. I think the only guy that kind of just stood out was probably Byron Jones, by shutting down his side of the team. But even he was not perfect. He was not perfect.
Right.
But Xavier Woods, I think you continue to see himself, in that role. And the question is going to be, how well does he play this season? Which I'm expecting he's going to have a better year. I think all of our secondary players will. And how much money are the Cowboys going to be willing to offer him? Is it even going to be a discussion? We've seen them bring in some players here. Ha Clinton Dix, Donovan Wilson is getting a lot of praise. As well as somebody to keep an eye on. So do they already have players in place? Is there already a plan in place to replace some of these guys? Just because the contracts, they're getting bigger. They can't keep everybody. But hopefully they can get the most out of him this season and make that run. And who knows, maybe they do value him enough where they see him as a centerpiece of the secondary, the defense. I think if that's one thing that I would really want to see out of Xavier Woods this season would be a bigger role in leadership there. Yeah, from the secondary. It's got to come from somebody. I feel like that secondary was too quiet last couple seasons. Like, who was the leader of that secondary? Who was the voice? You talk about some of these players around the league, like Earl Thomas or these types of safeties. That they command and lead that secondary. So you really want to get a player like that, and if it can come from your safety, man, I think you really do got to reconsider that second contract possibly.
Yeah, if you get a lot of production out of them, you always have that franchise tag, in your back pocket for him. But I hope, I have a real good feeling he's gonna have a fantastic year, and I'm predicting right now, Joe, at least 6 interceptions.
Very bold, but I like it. Go bold or go home, as they say. So, yeah, man, we'll see what this team does. But those are our top guys there, top 5 players. And, before we get to any kind of mini camps, any kind of action, this can change, obviously. But I think the Cowboys have really good players in place, sprinkled across this roster. Now it's just about bringing everything together here with the head coach, Mike McCarthy, which I feel like has been one of the final pieces of this puzzle. And they've drafted well for the most part. It hasn't been perfect by any means, but they've drafted relatively well. For a while here now with Will McClay in command of that draft board. So now, Mike, it's just about wrapping it all up with Mike McCarthy to put us over the edge. I'm hoping for that.
Yeah, the guy knows how to win. He's won before. We talk about Bill Belichick and Tom Brady, Joe. The chicken or the egg. We're going to find out. And Mike McCarthy, Aaron Rodgers. We already seen Aaron Rodgers without Mike McCarthy. Look what he did in the playoffs. They got to the playoffs. They didn't manage that playoffs well enough. So we know what Aaron Rodgers is without Mike McCarthy. Now we're about to figure out what Mike McCarthy is without Aaron Rodgers. And, he has a great quarterback by his side. He has talent upon talent. There's no excuses for anybody on this football team this year. Yeah, you talk about, it's his first year DCFN. Take it, Mike, take it easy on him. The talent's there. The experience is there. Let's go.
Let's go, man. So that's it for this podcast, Mike. Very, very great topics here. Everybody's kind of caught up in the whole Jamal Adams, Dak Prescott. We don't do that here. We're focusing on subjects that really matter, that keep the conversation moving, and that's this roster, and it's other players on this team, and where we're going, where we're heading, and the expectations, of this team. It's got to be better than 8-8. It's got to be better than 8-8. It's got to be, winning in the playoffs. So, great discussion, Mike. Let our subscribers and viewers, listeners, let them know where they can find you at, Mike.
Absolutely. Dallas Cowboy Football News on Facebook. Dallas Cowboy Football News on YouTube. DCF News 1 on Twitter, guys. Give me a follow. Give me a mention. Slide in my DMs, guys. Let's talk football. Because the only way to talk it is if you start the conversation.
And that's what we're all about here, guys. Starting the conversation. Make sure to keep that conversation going after the podcast. You can hit up Mike on his Twitter, as he mentioned there. And also, hit up the Frisco Report on Twitter, and that's at the Frisco Report. All right, at the Frisco Report. You can also find our webpage, www.thefriscoreport.com, for the latest news there. We got the draft classes listed on there. We got links to Mike's YouTube page, and also mine as well. Obviously, you can find me on YouTube, Cowboys Blog, Twitter and Instagram at Cowboys Blog Net. So you can find all that there at thefriscoreport.com. So for myself and Mike, we really do appreciate you guys, and we'll catch you for the next podcast next Tuesday night, everybody. Peace.